Jill McDonough's poems have appeared in the Threepenny Review, the New Republic, and Slate magazine. She is the recipient of fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts, the Fine Arts Work Center, a Dorothy and Louis B. Coleman Center for the Arts, and she also completed a Stegner Fellowship at Stanford University and was the 2010 recipient of the Witter Bynner Fellowship. Jill's book, Habeas Corpus, is a collection of 50 sonnets about American executions from the 1600s. As I read the poems in this collection, I felt a visceral sense of the gravity of not only the situations of each poem, but the weighing gravity of human life. I was aware that over and over again, I was entering a compact 14-line world in which language, image, and syntax carefully constructed a place that did more than document an event from history, but rather asked me as a reader to enter with my own experience. For me, the poem seemed to hover in a place between real horror and shock at what we are capable of as humans, and simultaneously a place where redeeming beauty and the realness of what we are capable of as humans. And in conjunction to that, I'd written that before I met Jill, but I went and picked her up in Park City this morning, and I feel like we are really lucky to have her here with us. She's extremely gracious and interested, and just very kind. So I'm glad that she's here with us today, and I'm excited to hear her read her poetry. Jill.
I think Ashley May is projecting about the gracious and the kind part, because she drove me through Provo Canyon via Midway, where there are ice castles, and I saw, like, we stopped and looked at a frozen waterfall, and there were people. She was like, I don't know if anybody's doing any ice climbing today, and I was like, ice climbing? That's a thing? Like, I didn't. It was very exciting. It was like a 2-hour amazing, beautiful. Then she took me up Rock Canyon and showed me the temple, and I was excited to come here before. I didn't know that the drive was also going to be fantastic. I'm excited. I haven't yet met Kimberly Johnson, whose work I really admire. Is she in the room, or she's gonna? Okay, she's busted for not being here. But I'm looking forward to meeting her because I think her work's amazing. So I hope that I live up to the expectations that I know she must be setting for you guys all the time. I'm going to read from my book first, and then some more recent poems after that. And I'll start with a witch. So I spent about 5 years doing the research and writing the poems for this collection of 50 sonnets about executions in American history. And I had a fellowship at the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown, which is at the tip of Cape Cod. And so I was reading all this local history stuff, all about pirates and shipwrecks. And I started to get the sense that American history was filled with all of these, at the time, really important executions. We were like, oh, that pirate is the worst thing that ever happened to us. We got to get rid of him. And then 20 years later, we'd forget about that guy, and we'd have to go through that all again. So I started thinking about how you could chart a sort of timeline of American history that you'd have to include a witch, and you would have to, of course, it would be like the first electrocution and the first guy who died in the gas chamber, and you need a pirate. All of these ways that you could think about how American history changed over time through jurisprudence and the ways in which we decided to cast someone out of what it meant to be American by killing them. So I'm going to start with a witch named Susanna Martin. July 19th, 1692, Susanna Martin, Salem, Massachusetts. She hurt Elizabeth Brown with nails and pins, as birds pecking her legs or pricking her with the motion of their wings, choking her then with a bunch like a pullet's egg. She made a sure man lose his way, bewildered, striking at lights with sticks. She kept John Pressy's cowherd small, and came in Bernard Peach's window at night to lay upon him an hour or two in all, till he felt loosened or lightened. Jarvis Ring she afflicted by lying upon him in bed or turning into a hog. She sent a thing like a puppy to haunt John Kimball, witnesses said. They condemned her for these just and sufficient proofs, to the cart and gallows hill and a hempen noose. Of course, the sonnets rhyme, but I also felt I would find a lot of ways in which these events rhymed over time. And this cart, people being really concerned about the ignominy of a cart, that it wouldn't be a coach that would take you away to your death, but an open cart, as if you were livestock or produce that people got really upset about. Although there's a lot of stuff in there that's italics, and all of those things come from the primary sources. In this case, it was the trial record. June 4th, 1715, Margaret Gallagher, Boston, Massachusetts. The news that week includes a lioness displayed, attacking fowls and cats. They watched her feeding time, remarked on her merciless cruelty. Meanwhile, Cotton Mather preached against hard-hearted sinners and hardness of heart. He helped with her confession, which reflects on attempts to destroy her unborn child, a part of her wicked crime completed through neglect. Now hers is a stony heart of flint. Ah, poor Margaret, behold. The congregation calls for your wondrous industry, agony, your death 4 days off. Pray for a clean and a soft heart. Don't fall from this fresh gallows to the mouths of dragons, unconcerned, adamant, so little broken. July 12th, 1726, William Fly, Boston, Massachusetts. A boatswain on an English slaver he threw his masters overboard was caught within the week. In prison, he refused all food and drink except for rum. Refused to forgive his enemies or say he had. No, I won't die with a lie in my mouth. He swore all the way to the scaffold, wished the ship would fly away with devils, cursed himself and the day he was born and her that bare him, heaven, the God who judged him, the man who turned him in. They prayed for his repentance. He offered scorn, then awed the crowd with advice to the hangman on his trade. He tied the knot himself. They let him sway, then tarred his body and gibbeted him in the bay. Do you guys know what a gibbet is? A gibbet, do you know what a gibbet is? I bet you do. It's an iron cage in the shape of a human body. And after we would execute someone, if we wanted everybody to remember that we had done that, we would tar the body so it would last a little bit longer. Birds want to eat that body. And then we would put it in an iron cage shaped like a body and hoist it up so that everybody could see it when they were coming into the harbor, to know that that's what happened to you when you were a pirate. And to know that that's what's coming, and to also decide that you're going to tie that knot yourself and that your hands would be... one of the things that was interesting to me about engaging with American history in this is to see these human beings not just as court cases or as names or as a list, but as a kind of person who could keep his hands steady and tying his own noose. I thought that was an amazing thing to find out about another person. September 18th, 1755, Mark and Phyllis, Cambridge, Massachusetts. Was he your master? Yes, he was. How did he die? I suppose he was poisoned. Do you know he was poisoned? I do know he was poisoned. She'd been his for 30 years, then finally stowed white powder behind a black jug, doctored the water. And had your master any? Yes, he had. In barley drink and water gruel. His daughters, Miss Betsy and Miss Molly, served their dad. It was Mark who first contrived it. He had read the Bible through. Laying violent hands by sticking or stabbing or cutting his throat to shed his blood's a sin. Phyllis blamed Mark on the stand and was burned alive at the stake, while he was hanged, his body up for years, displayed in chains. That line, by sticking or stabbing or cutting his throat to shed, comes directly from the trial record. That was Phyllis's testimony. And they had really convinced themselves by reading the Bible that if the crime didn't include any bloodshed, then they would still be able to go to heaven, that it wouldn't be a sin. And I was very moved by hearing this woman with this litany of violent acts that she didn't get to commit. Like, it was like she was still wishing that she could have killed her master in these bloody ways, sticking, stabbing, cutting his throat. But she didn't get to. November 10th, 1865, Major Henry Wirtz. I talked about how I found rhyme repetition in the historical record of executions in American history. Here, too, when people talk about Andersonville Prison, which is what we're getting ready to talk about, they talk about how the corpses were stacked like cordwood, and also that the people who were found guilty of war crimes said that they simply obeyed the legal orders of their superiors. And both of those, I was startled to, like, both of those I would have thought were moments that came from American history, but came from history that we have surrounding Nuremberg and World War II. And to recognize that it actually also came from the Civil War that we had forgotten in that 80 years was startling to me. November 10th, 1865, Major Henry Wirtz, Old Arsenal Prison, District of Columbia. The pictures of Andersonville Prison: makeshift tents, latrines, emaciated men, mass graves lined with naked corpses, stripped by their friends and stacked like cordwood. Mud. The water made the tiniest cut a death sentence: gangrene, scurvy, maggots, diarrhea, lice. Wirtz boasts of killing more Yankees than General Lee. Some months, nearly every other man died. He was tried for war crimes, argued he simply obeyed the legal orders of his superiors. He was calm on the scaffold in his black shroud, prayed but had no last words. His former prisoners climbed trees to see so they could say they were there, and the Andersonville jailer dangled in the air. My name's Jill McDonough, and I don't know much about my family. I'm going to talk a little bit later about my family tree and what I've learned since I came to Utah. It's really easy to learn a lot about your family tree in Utah. But McDonough, not so much. Like, we've kind of lost, like, my last name, I found out a lot about, like, my mother's family and my father's mother's family, but the McDonough part, I don't know. And I found that there were two McDonoughs who were executed in American history. And maybe I'm related to those guys, and maybe I'm not. I don't know. Probably you can tell me afterward. June 28th, 1895, Michael McDonough, Columbus, Ohio. Say he's my great-great-grandfather, or say he's yours. Cleveland Press, Fresh Ohio News put our grandfathers hanging on the sports page after the deadly cigarette. And soon C. Grimes will start in business giving baths. McDonough's headlines hard to find. And then it's sickening, awful scene at the gallows, as shocking and gory as a guillotine. He'd stabbed his wife to death on a dark bridge, lost his case, and spent a year in prison where he had grown heavy, his flesh and muscles soft. His head came off. Blood spurted in the air upon the spectators, executioners, and on the prison physicians, bloody as butchers. One of the things that I was excited about moving to Utah for? I'm here for 4 months as a visiting professor at Westminster College, and I've been here like a month and a week. And I've learned a lot. I didn't know so much. I didn't know about the Mormon migration and how quickly it happened from the moment that people showed up here in 1847. I didn't know about William Clayton inventing the odometer while they were coming out here. Did you guys know this? I love that. I love that he like tied a red bandana and was like 1, 2, 3, and then was like, you know what? What if I invent something? I don't know, a rodometer. Like this. I love the invention, and I love how it all just happened like 20 minutes ago, and you still have like photographs of everybody. Like when you're trying to do research in like 1608, people are like, I don't remember. Maybe it happened like that. But this, you guys got it all. Like it's in a cave, and we've got all the pictures, and you are set. The other thing that I really like about Utah is that you still, although you're really falling off on the job on this one, but people still, if they're going to be executed, they can opt to be shot. And I think that is more honest than a lot of the ways that we think about execution in this country. There's a lot of, you just go to sleep so peacefully. It's like we didn't even really kill that person and take his life. But here, that's an option. You can make it really explicit that that's what's happening. There's blood atonement, and there's a reason for that. I like it. January 17th, 1977, Gary Gilmore, Point of the Mountain, Utah. A life of crime, of theft and drugs and jail in Oregon and Illinois. But when he robbed a Provo gas station motel, he shot and killed 2 clerks, both Mormon men, Max Jensen and Ben Bushnell, with wives and sons. There are sins that the blood of a calf, of a lamb, or doves cannot remit. They must be atoned by the blood of man. He asked to die like a man, and did, chained to a regular green chair. When asked for last words, he said, "Let's do it." Black t-shirt, white pants. They added a hood, their target, then bang, 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 3 noises, quick. A line from Gilmore's mother that I found. They shot your brother's heart out on the ground. Gary Gilmore, his execution was one of the first that after this period of the Supreme Court saying, you know what, I'm not really sure that this is legit. Maybe the death penalty isn't constitutional, and for sure it's not constitutional the way that you guys are doing it, 60s and 70s people. So everybody took a little time and fixed their statutes. And after Gary Gilmore, there has been this real rise, especially through the 80s, as we change our focus on who we want to kill in this country. There was that period that you know about where we were really interested in pirates and witches, who were often single women with property. Didn't like that. And then there was a period when single Irish female domestic servants coming in, we were a little uncomfortable with that. So especially if they were going to be having sex with black men and having their babies, we didn't want that. So there was a rise of, there's these demographic shifts that you can chart in who we decided to kill. Charles Brooks, who was executed in 1982, I have really great footnotes. And I'll read you. The note that I have for Charles Brooks says, Brooks was the first black man legally executed in America since 1967. The Dallas Morning News said, officials said the remaining 171 prisoners with death sentences in Texas appeared stunned by Brooks' execution, which capital penalty opponents warned might spark a bloodbath in Texas and the South. We have this shared understanding that Texas is the place where all these executions happen, but it wasn't so until 82, and Charles Brooks was the first. December 7th, 1982, Charles Brooks, Huntsville, Texas. Before the first lethal injection, doctors decided it violates the Hippocratic Oath. So technicians got the job. Physicians confided that it can take hours and be a real bloodbath. It's not like a tetanus shot. If you miss the vein, it's excruciating. Witnesses watched as Brooks, in gold pants, brown shirt open to the waist, lay on a gurney, was strained by 6 straps. He took a long, deep yawn. 2 needles in his arm, blood splatters on the sheet. He wheezed, gasped. Death did not appear to be painless. First, do no harm, the papers would read the next day. In Brooks' last breaths, he prayed, I bear witness there is no God but Allah. Unto Allah do we belong. June 11th, 2001, Timothy McVeigh, Terre Haute, Indiana. Victims' loved ones in Oklahoma City gathered to watch on closed-circuit TV. Security kept hackers from stealing the signal. His lawyer said McVeigh was able to see the moon in the sky on the way to the death house, and that meant something to him. Viewers saw his face hard as stone, face of evil. His eyes looked black. He stared at the camera, jaw clenched, the face of hate. His eyes rolled back when his heart stopped, and he died. Most saw the devil back in hell, which caused one man to say, he's not a monster, guys. Not when you're looking him in the face. He paused. There's no facial expressions on him, so there's no way of knowing exactly what he is. I'm going to read one more sonnet, then I'm going to read you some more recent work. And this last sonnet that I'm going to read is the last one in the whole book. May 13th, 2005, Michael Ross, Somers, Connecticut. I am one of the greatest of sinners. I have murdered 8 women in a horrible way. The papers lined up 8 photos, smiling girls with feathered hair posing at school or parties. Wendy, April, Zung, Paula, Deborah, Robin, Leslie, and Tammy were dead as soon as I saw them, he confessed. A volunteer, he wanted to spare their families, or die, or get attention, or he had death row syndrome, was a malignant narcissist. Outside the prison, supporters told reporters, what do we do with trash? We bury it. Inside, strapped to a table, Ross gasped and shuddered while Robin's sister watched. She said, it was too peaceful, but I'm sure I will feel some closure soon. So that was a long time alone with a lot of strange archives and trial records in libraries with the most generous librarians. I love librarians. I was in archives and courthouses all over the country working on that, and I wrote some other stuff during that 5 years too. But it's a long I mean, I picked it. It's my fault, but it was a long project. And I think of this one as I don't know, like I got a sense of some closure when I was able to write this one, which is it's like an undoing. My history of CPR. In the 1700s, once we could print stuff, a guy in the Society for the Recovery of Persons Apparently Drowned posted broadsides like our cartoon Heimlich how-tos. Except they used F's for S's, suggested blowing smoke up the patient's ass. For real, Somebody should blow with force into the lungs by applying the mouth to the mouth of the patient, closing his nostrils with one hand, while somebody else should throw the smoke of tobacco up the fundament into the bowels by means of a pipe. At least they used a pipe. That broadside says if you want to make mouth to mouth less indelicate, it may be done through a handkerchief. Now I go to the movies, see Clive Owen punch a fresh corpse in the chest. Human, angry with death at the dead, our puny lives. Imagine the first time that worked. The look on the cave woman's face when her cave husband coughs a little, blinks, comes to. Of course you'd hit the corpse. Of course you'd try to force air in, breathe for the beloved, the lost one, reverse everything. In 2 Kings, Elijah mouth-to-mouthed a little boy, revived him, maybe the first medical record, first EMT. He put his mouth on his mouth, his eyes on his eyes, and the flesh of the child waxed warm. Golden Gate Hank. I wake up with a toothache. Think, I should write about a toothache. Make it somehow worthwhile. It's got everything. Intimacy, decay, how the body's busy night and day doing you in. One of the hundreds of jumpers' corpses pulled from the bay had a note in its pocket saying, "No reason at all except I have a toothache." Josie's grandfather shot himself after his 5th sinus operation failed. Josie says empty nose syndrome, and I get confused. How can hollows be hollowed? But then I go to emptynosesyndrome.org, cup my poor nose in horror, grateful for all I take for granted, can't see. Golden Gate Hank hates his nickname. If you wanted to be called Serenity Hank, Ken tells him, you shouldn't have jumped off the bridge. The ones that live all say they changed their minds in the 4 seconds before they hit, tried to land feet first, and managed it. Ken says, don't tell people I think every day of how I wouldn't kill myself. They get the wrong idea. I think every day of how I'd save myself, save Josie, stab the bad guy, fall feet first, punch the great white in the eyeball, play dead in the bullet-ridden mass grave. From the back seat of the Suburban, I heard my mother say to my father, driving across a high bridge always makes me want to jump. You might live. A 17-year-old boy hit feet first, swam to shore and walked for help, saying his back was killing him. Another guy realized he was alive and underwater, felt something brushing his broken legs. Great, now I get eaten by a shark, he thought. It happens. But this was a seal, circling. Apparently, the only thing that was keeping me alive. And you cannot tell me that wasn't God, because that's what I believe, and that's what I'll believe until the day I die. I teach in a prison. 4 prisons for Boston University. In the prison education program there, I teach college classes, and I've done it since 1999, and I love it. And one of the reasons I love it is that they use language differently from the way that I use language, and so I'm always learning something. And I'm going to read you one called Habed. At the women's prison, I get M's late homework, ask was she sick last week. I got habed, she says. She shrugs. You got what? I say, a little alarmed, although not much. She's not upset, so getting habed can't be like getting raped. Habed, she says, speaking up and slowing down. She thinks I haven't heard her. She's not a native speaker, so she's used to repeating herself. Getting habed so normal, it doesn't occur to her that I might need some help. I don't know what that means, I say. And all the ladies hear it, get excited. They never know more than me. Dee doesn't buy it. Come on, she says. You know, she got habed. She went to court. I say a sharp, I'm sorry, what? If they say I ain't got mines, or she don't know nothing. So Dee is on her guard, unsure if I'm busting their chops or what. My heart is still. I get it. I'm seeing language in action. This isn't slang to them. She went to court on a writ of habeas corpus, I say, and they nod and laugh some more and take their seats. I'm going to read two more. One more prison one, and then a new one. Alleged. I had a favorite student in the prison. He was my age, beautiful, sturdy, and enormous from lifting weights. He was doing great, working hard on his papers, had terrific things to say. Then he was gone. When I asked where he was, the other students said he'd been sent away for an alleged. I didn't understand, and they tried to explain. Sometimes we have to work together to figure out what's prison slang, what's legalese, what everybody knows. An alleged, you know, they say he did it. When I asked what he was alleged to have done, they said, exasperated, the alleged. What was I, retarded? I quit asking after we ran through this who's on first routine a couple times, went to the blackboard to diagram not it was a great party or this is a difficult class, but it was an alleged beating. I took a little time to outline allegation, allegiance, allege. They nodded, into it now, taking notes. One said in an experimental tone, it was allegedly brutal. And I pointed at him with my chalk, said, yes, very good, and wrote it down. I'm going to read one more, and then you guys can ask me anything you want. I want to thank you again for coming. And this is, I'm really enjoying being here and reading. This part of American history really was not on my radar. I would have like LDS and Mormons being the same thing. It wasn't news to me, but I really wasn't sure that was definitely for sure the same. So I'm learning a lot. And this is a poem about some of the things that I'm learning. Anyway, I'm reading it. It's fresh, so I can still change it. If you have ideas about how wrong I got it, feel free to let me know. And I don't have a pen up here, but I've got one over there. I'll write it all down and I'll fix it. Sealing Woodrow. My parents visit me in Salt Lake City, and we go let the Mormons tell us who we are or who we've been. Museum of names of the dead they keep. The granite mountain record vault, huge caves with Mosler doors. The missionaries are adorable. Girls from Argentina, Brazil. I say they're welcome to baptize our dead once we figure out who they are. I think I'm really funny. I think it's a myth, a stereotype, matzah made with Christian blood, Muslims blowing stuff up. But no, one thanks me, reassures me the dead have agency, that nobody can force you, dead or alive, to believe anything that you don't. Our dead can decide. She'll just give them a chance. Later, when my dad gives me crap for pimping my forefathers out, I see a pair of earnest, suited angels on bikes, missionaries knocking on my Grandpa Woodrow's cloud. They wake him up. What I remember most of my grandfather, him saying, pipe down, telling me, go cut a switch. He was kidding. Hey, Gonka, here's what you get. Eternal pitch, days of scripture, winged boys on bikes waving their golden plates and saying our family will be sealed together forever. Forever. He could barely stand me during halftime. Little me dancing in the smoke from his Salems by his scratchy lazy boy, thumb in a hollow of cheek. They'll preach till he gets the picture, knows the truth. I became the pain in the neck he always knew I'd be. There's an afterlife. He's in it, and I'm here thinking of him. Thank you.